Wow. I came away from this conversation really understanding the power of being humble. I took so many lessons from Yaron and understanding, even in the medical profession, how that can be translated into other parts of our world, how we show up, how we trust, how we empower others. There is so much wisdom in what he has to say. I think he is one of those people to watch, not only in the company that he's raising, but the way that he thinks about the world and the people around him. So I hope you enjoy it. I hope you even get 10% of what I did from this conversation, because I think that will make your understanding so much better. So let's dive in. Okay, so welcome back to Vantage Point Conversations. I'm your host, Colin Parsons. I basically get to have great conversations with people all around the world that I would probably not get to speak to in my old corporate life. And today, my guest is, I'm going to say, I think I've got your first name right, Yaron,
Right.
and then Suissa.
Yeah.
Am I? Yeah. I always worry that I'm going to insult people, especially with surnames. But Yaron, I don't ever introduce my guests. It's not me being lazy. Some people think it is, but actually, it's just I don't think I would do a very good job. So I'm just going to hand it over to you for a few seconds. Well, actually, just take as long as you like, just to give some background, context, highlights, lowlights, anything in between that you think you would like people to know about you, and then we just dive into the conversation from there.
Cool. Thank you. So I'll start by saying I'm a father. I have two gorgeous girls, and I going to my professional life. I started as a student in the Hebrew University. I did a PhD and a postdoc in biochemistry, then in cancer and diabetes. And during that period of time, I also did my MBA studies because I realized that I want to do something that will have an impact not just only in the academic world, but also when I go out. Then I moved to the industry. I worked in the industry for over a decade and a bit. And when I started as an R&D employee, director in several companies. But soon enough, I moved into the business development and into operational world, where it's actually a combination of both understanding the science, understanding the business, and understanding the operational parts, financials, legal, and all that. And and in my last positions, I was actually in C-level suite positions, including an acting CEO, depends on the company and the time. And that's it. And right now, I'm a co-founder together with a very good friend and a partner of mine, whose name is Dr. Walter Wasser. He's a little bit older than me, even though very young in spirit. And we took a technology from the Hebrew University. We licensed it from the laboratory of Professor Ofer Beni, who's a brilliant scientist, one of the rising stars in the Hebrew University, but very, very nice person. So it really is a pleasure to work with. And today we are working in a new company that we actually established a year and a bit ago, and trying to find a solution or to develop a solution for liver cancer.
Amazing. You've given me so much to sort of jump off from there. I think, I know nothing about the medical profession, although strangely, I've been having a lot of discussions sort of around medicine, blood taking, sampling, a whole load of things recently. And it's, so I'm quite fascinated by all of this, but, just to understand, when you were actually talking, you sort of moved around a little bit from sort of research now to sort of the development side. Why is that? Because is that, are these easy areas to go from one to the other? Does it make sense? Is that the normal path in that sort of type of career?
So I didn't say, but when I started working in the industry, I also established a nonprofit organization together with very good two partners, a nonprofit organization where I was actually voluntarily running it for about 8 years. And there we were actually doing exactly that, meaning focusing on the gap between academia and industry, where there is always a gap because when you do 5 or 10 years in the academic world and then you want to move into the industry, on the one hand, you don't have a lot of the skills of working in a company because you didn't work in a company or in a lab. and at the same time you're overqualified to almost all the entry level positions. So it creates a big gap, and we were trying to actually deal with it. It came from my experience of understanding that when you want to move into the industry, it's very, very hard at the beginning, and later on you continue to learn. And I think that in general, it's a natural situation because in the industry you have in every lab a few PhDs. Not all of them are going to become academic professors or researchers. Some of them are interested in that. Some of them understand that they're better going into the industry because they want to do something else. The industry has other positions rather than just R&D. So you can actually expand. There are regulatory positions and clinical positions. So there are a lot of other things you can do. And I think it's really a matter of what a person wants to do when they get to that point, meaning they want to continue in the academic world. And, it's a lot of commitment because you have to go to a postdoc and spend a few years, usually not in Israel in our case, but I think in general, you need to move to a different academic world, academic institution. So you kind of start over for a few years and you have to be successful in order to become a professor. It's not a given that you become a professor if you do a postdoc. So I think that's that. To me personally, the reason was that when I finished my PhD, I did a very good PhD. I worked with a very, very nice person. My professor, his name is Ofer Gerlitz. He's a very, very nice person. I learned a lot from him, and we did a lot of stuff which was very academic. And when I finished my PhD, I said, okay, I want to do something which is more practical, meaning I want to develop a drug that will impact people. In my case. But then I was convinced by a different professor. His name is Yuval Dor, Professor Yuval Dor, also an amazing researcher and a person. And he convinced me to come and do a postdoc in his lab, which is I was honored to do it. It's not something to be taken for granted. And there I realized, I mean, I did some real practical, or so I should I say translational research, meaning if it worked, then and I managed to heal a certain kind of pancreatic cancer in mice, but then it didn't really work. Meaning, at the beginning, it showed that it's working. Later on, when the tumors were too advanced, then the drug that we were using in our research was not good enough. But I realized that this is what I want to do, meaning to find a place where I can actually take a molecule and bring it to the market. I didn't do it immediately because I thought that first I need to learn. I mean, some people are more talented than me, so maybe they just decided to do it immediately, but I thought it would be smarter to go into the industry, learn a little bit the know-how, and then go into it. But yes, in a way, you're right. It's a natural thing for some of the people because you reach a point where you have to make a decision whether you're going to stay in the academia or you want to move to the industry, to the bio industry.
Yeah. I was just thinking though, like as you said, that that's quite a commitment there, right? That's you kind of have to choose a path, and it's really strange because you mentioned obviously you're a father. I'm a father too to two young children. They recently they've mentioned that the kids can start musical lessons earlier on. Um, they basically have said so my 6-year-old can choose what instrument she wants to play, but you have to kind of commit for like 2 years. And I'm like, she's 6 years old, like it's just about playing. And in this world, I just I come from finance more than anything else, so it's strange. Oftentimes we do something and then we kind of stick with it for a long time. We don't, some people do move, but I can't really think of too many examples where people actually can go from one to the other. So um, yeah, it's nice when you've got all of those skill sets, right? And you can see both sides of it and, the research stuff. And I think, we often have to pick a lane and we kind of stick with it for a long time. But I think the fact that you've blended both of those, I think that's such a great thing because you can, we're not all just one thing. We can use that understanding, and when we see like another side of it, like the business side or something like that, you can really bring those together. And I feel that in this world, just not the medical profession, but actually, if we allowed people to see the other side of things, you could actually, not just sit in your lane. You could actually grow something much bigger with all of that knowledge. But we just kind of get stuck in those lanes, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. To a certain extent, I mean, I agree. I think that some people get to the age of 40 or 50 and then they have a crisis and then they change their whole world, right? So in the academic world, I think it happens where you get to a point that you understand. Okay, I want to do more research. I want to do more research as a principal investigator with my own lab. I want to do it working for working in a lab for someone. And there are people who say I want to change the atmosphere or change the environment and go into something which is more industry oriented. So it really does have to do with who the person is and what they want to do. But I also really believe that when you learn a lot in one field, you can actually take it to other fields, because it's true that you'll have um, to fill the gaps, because there will be gaps. You never know everything, even in your own field, you never know everything. But I'm saying when you have to move to something else, then you have to also learn a lot. And this is something that I feel that, especially in the biotech industry, or I was not only in biotech, I was actually in medical device and in digital health. I even worked a few years with a real amazing team in solar energy. I did business development per se, so I didn't know anything. I mean, it was physics. I'm a biologist, so by definition, there were a lot of things I didn't know. And it was fascinating because you see what you can actually take from what you did beforehand and apply it in where you are. And there are things that were just irrelevant, but by doing so you actually kind of it focuses you on the real core essential understanding of things when you're moving so far away from your industry. But I have to say that after 3.5 years I realized that I really want to go back to where I am, because I felt very, very convenient in the bio world because of the I mean, in the end, we're trying to heal people. We're trying to help people. We're not trying to just, at least this is our belief, both and my partner, we're not looking into making money as a cause. The cause is to really bring a new relief to the world, to cancer patients in this case. And obviously, the only way to do it is to have an incentivizing financial mechanism, or else no one's going to do it. And this is something that the first time I really heard it, like bluntly, was from a professor I worked with. He's a physician in Hadassah. He's a very, very nice guy. And he told me, listen, it doesn't matter what you find in the lab. If you won't be able to find a way to monetize it, no one's going to buy it, because no one's going to be willing to put the money to develop it. So you really have to find a way to do so. It makes the bio industry basically a patent based industry because of that, because that's the way to basically protect your assets. But the thing is that I understand, I mean, this is the way the world works. So you have to find a way of doing it. And yeah, and I think that a lot of things that you learn on the way, by the way, I don't think it's only for biologists. I mean, I see a lot of different people doing a change in their lives. I mean, we have a friend who was doing a lot of marketing for many years, and then he decided to just open a store, like a food store, sort of a restaurant, but something like more of a fast food thing. And you see that he's actually taking all his understanding and everything and he's applying it in different worlds. So I think it's always like that. And usually the limits are in our heads, I think, meaning we can do it, but we don't think we can do it sometimes. So you have to, jump and try. But it's scary. I won't say it's not scary. It's a very big transition always. But I think that if you do it and it works, it's cool.
Yeah. It's I've seen that many times, and I think certainly definitely in like industries, we don't kind of look left and right. We kind of just we say, "Oh, we are looking," but you're not. You're still looking in finance, just maybe just loosely around the edges. But if you look to the medical profession, how that is within the finance world, and there is so much learning within that. But have you been a lifelong learner? Is that something that really because what's driving you? Because is it that you like to learn, or you understand yourself and you're going, right, I'm more suited to this? What's the thing for you?
That's a tough question. I'll start by saying that I think that when I was in seventh grade, I saw the teacher in sciences, the sciences teacher. She was basically showing us how iodine disappears when you expose it to air. And I was fascinated. I still remember that. It's like, I don't know, 43 years ago or something. I don't remember exactly, but I was much younger, let's put it this way. And I think that was one of the times when I said, okay, that's what I want to do when I'll be an adult, meaning I want to do sciences. It was very exciting for me to learn about science. And I mean, just remember when we were kids, you didn't have internet. I mean, all these things that today are available, at that time, you could go to the library and find how do you say,
Yeah,
encyclopedia, like the
encyclopedia, yeah. Yeah.
exactly, and you had to go and read in a book and try to imagine what it is. So I remember that I was fascinated. I was trying to learn more. So yeah, I love learning. I think it's always and the thing is that it's not just learning by reading. You actually get to learn from people. In every position I always learn not just from the people who are senior to me, but also from the people who work for me because I believe that you always work with people who know something more than you do, or else why have them? I mean, you don't want to have a copy of yourself when people who can actually raise you and not just keep you where you are. And so that is one thing, and the other thing is that I think that I like challenges. I think that's part of what I do. I like challenges. When there's a challenge, where there's a will, there's a way. So wherever I think that there's something interesting, so we just have to find a way to make it happen. And thank God there's a lot of people, good people on the way that are helping. I mean, it's nothing has been done just because, one of the things that I've learned very early in life is being humble is not a bad thing. It's actually a good thing. You need to learn, you need to remember that whatever you succeeded, there are probably a lot of people who helped you on the way. And it's very important to always remember that and be thankful because, or else a lot of people fail because nobody helped them. So I think that's part of it. And my way to return to the community was to establish in this non for profit organization, which was basically a way to try and make a difference. I think we did to a certain extent. We had a lot of partners, very good partners from Jerusalem municipality and other organizations in Jerusalem. It was exciting to do so because it was a different world. You move from an employment world to a world where people are just trying to help. We weren't the only ones. There are a lot of other people. I don't think it's specific to Jerusalem. Wherever you tell a person, I mean, this is something I learned that if you ask for help, most people would try and help you because most people are good in essence. So you find a very different world where there's a lot of good taking place. And the truth is that I learned a lot also there because in the end of the day, you learn from people who want to help you a lot of things that you wouldn't have learned if you didn't ask for their help. So altogether, I think that's a way of doing things. I mean, I believe in that.
I think that's yeah, I really am a big believer in that the world is good and people are good. And I think, there's a lot going on in the world and we're not going to get into that, but oftentimes we get a lot of signals to say that the world is bad, but actually most people are kind and want to help you. And I think surrounding yourself by those type of people as well, it's amazing what can actually be achieved when, you know, and we often think about not asking because we're going to get rejected, but actually, if you're around those people and you just ask, it's amazing what can actually happen, right? And it's just asking and just putting it out in the world and sort of saying okay. And I think that's moved a lot forward for me. I was always concerned about asking, but I think it's yeah, just ask and it will probably surprise you.
Yeah, yeah, it's something that I mean, one of the things that happened to us when we started our nonprofit organization is that we wanted to find a good location. So we approached, there's in Jerusalem a very successful college called Israeli College for Engineering. And we approached a professor who's a good friend of mine. And there was another person there who was running their accelerator, also an amazing guy. And we told them we're looking for a place to do our events because mainly the way for us to create interaction between academics and professionals was through networking meetings. So we asked for their help if we could do it, and they became our hub. And in long run thinking, I think part of why we succeeded was someone was actually, we reached out and someone was willing to give us a chance and show it. And in the end, not only did it help us, it actually also helped them. I started a course there teaching that networking is not a birth gift. It's something you can learn. And these are the kind of things, just like you said, in many cases, people are just afraid to reach out because they're afraid of the rejection that may happen. In many cases, they don't get rejected. There's a kind of because it's uncertainty. So when there's uncertainty, people don't want to do it. And when you learn that actually reaching out, and if you do it correctly, of course, I mean, there are ways of doing it in a smart way, there are ways of doing it in a silly way. But if you do it correctly, then usually you do get a nice answer. And I have to say, it still works. Meaning, whenever you ask people, again, I believe that when you ask for someone to help you, in most cases they will. I do understand and I live it in the business world. Help comes with cost. No one helps without cost. the fact that you pay someone to help you when it becomes business doesn't make it a bad thing as long as it makes sense. Meaning, a lot of people are willing to help you, but again, their time is also expensive, so you have to accept that. And this is one of the concepts that that I don't know if, how to say, it, but they grew in me with time is that you have to be fair. Always be fair. Never try and take advantage of people. I know that a lot of people don't say it this way. A lot of other people do. But if you keep being fair, usually it comes back to you in so many ways. And so far, again, it feels like I guess we're doing something good because there are a lot of good people who believe in our company and what we're doing. But all along the way, that was something that usually I see as a kind of a vision, meaning be fair eventually. Even if now it feels like you could get more, usually you get more just by being fair. So I do believe in this kind of perspective.
I love that. I think we overlook that a lot. Being fair, I've often talked about values. You know, again, I've worked in the finance industry, and there's a lot of buzzwords around values and stuff like that. um, but that word fair, it seems sometimes it seems a bit soft, but I think it's really powerful because being fair, you know, people will help you, but yes, at some stage you might need to pay for that. There needs to be maybe some exchange, and you know, you can't take people's time and energy, effort, knowledge, etc. all the time. That's and you want everything to work out. I've always been fair. I don't, especially when it comes to money. I don't want anyone to lose out. But I was just thinking about your business, and I think maybe we should make that transition into. So you started it. How long ago did you say? 3 years, 3, 4 years, or did I
We
miss that?
started the company in November 24
Okay.
officially, but we really worked on this project about a year before on and off. I mean, I was working in a different position, so it was basically on my free time, not during, because you have to do a lot of research. And when we started, I mean, I know Professor Benny from a big project I was involved in Hebrew University. She was my liaison to the academic personnel in Hebrew University, and it was an amazing experience. I mean, she's an amazing person. I mean, if she sees it, I hope she's not blushing, but she's one of those people who are very, very smart, very innovative, and very, very nice, and know how to convey a message that never creates antagonism. Meaning, even if she doesn't agree with you, she'll try and explain in a way that in most cases, you'll just say, I agree, because it is a very, very good point, but it's not in a place, you're not in a place where you feel that someone's, how do you say, overpowering you, or it's actually coming from a very professional point of view. And the truth is that we started to look for patents beforehand, and we were all over the world, meaning we tested about 10 different patents in the US, in Israel, some in Europe. And I mean, 10 patents, I mean, basically three per continent, and three in Israel. And eventually we got back to her because I said, I know her. Maybe there's something interesting. Let's look at her thing. We went to meet with her, and that's how everything started. So, yes, so we started about, I should say, 2.5, 3 years ago when we really started doing this specific project.
So in that, so let's just, for context for people that are listening, do you want to just give a quick overview of what it is that you're developing and maybe why you're developing it, if that
Yes,
makes
so
sense?
I'll explain it in very short. Um, One of the worst cancers that people have is liver cancer. Liver cancer, you have 1.2 or 1.3 million patients annually. Most of them, by the way, are in Asia, but you have also a lot in Europe and in the US. And the problem with it is that there are not very good therapies so far for liver cancer. The time expectancy is very low. The survival rate is less than 20% in 5 years and about 50% in 2 years. And the problem with it is that its current solutions have two problems. One is that the efficacy is not so good, and the other one is that they all have very bad adverse effects. Now, one of the traditional therapies that have been used is something which is called, it's a local regional chemotherapy. In other words, the chemo is being directed with a catheter into the area of the tumor in the liver, and it's there together with blood vessel blocking beads that are supposed to create a localized therapy, meaning that the drug will not go anywhere else, but will stay within the vicinity of the tumor in the liver. And by doing so, you can avoid the side effects. Now, the concept is very, very good, but in practice, all the different current solutions still have a lot of very bad adverse effects. Many of them are not related to the drug, they're actually related to the, should I say, engineering or structure of the way that it's being happened. So this is happens with this. You can see these are basically, this is not what they use, but these are beads just a tiny little bit smaller. I mean, we talk about microns, like a few thousand smaller than that, but thousands of bits like this. They mix them with a drug and then they inject them with a catheter through the arterial, through the artery to the tumor, and then those bits create a wall. Once the wall is formed, which is quite fast, a few problems happens with this current therapy. One of them is that most of the drug doesn't reach the tumor because of the blockage. So most of it is actually is blocked behind the wall that just formed, and it doesn't reach the tumor. But the even worse side effects come from the fact that this wall is permanent. So that means that you have a full blockage very quickly, and then it's permanent. So the tumor doesn't get a lot of the drug, and on top of that, there are a lot of side effects that are related to the occlusion of a blood vessel forever. A problem with it or downside with it is that chemotherapy is not being given only once, it's being given several times. So every time you need to find a new blood vessel in order to occlude it with the therapy, and then you're increasing the burden on the liver of an already sick liver in a person. So it could end with a lot of very bad side effects, including death because of liver failure. And this is where Professor Benny came with a very different approach. And this is what she invented, which is what we are doing now. You can see here, wait a second. These are basically the same, it's the same concept of beads, but the difference is that these beads are made of a material which is very special. The skeleton or the scaffold of those beads, of our beads, what it is made of is a material that when it gets to the tumor area, it starts to dissolve. So we also create a wall, but we have pores in our beads or microspheres, and because of that, the blood continues to trickle through the microspheres. So the first problem of full blockage is already solved. And the other thing is that there are two different drugs in the microspheres that are basically being released once the microsphere starts to dissolve, right? Because of the vicinity to the tumor due to pH. I'm not going to get into that, but the point is that then you have a flux of two different drugs into the tumor, very, very close to the tumor for about 14 days, which is by far more than anybody else does. And about after 14 days, these microspheres basically dissolve and being washed away. So the artery that has been used is clear for another session and there's nothing there. So by doing so, we're actually enabling a much more concentrated, localized drugs into the area of the tumor, but we're avoiding all the downsides of whatever is being used today. And there are a lot of different technologies trying to do so. And the interesting thing is that because it's for 14 days, it creates a window for a lot of other therapies to be added to it. For example, if one wants to do immunotherapy, today when they do it, they have a very short window if they do it together with the traditional methods. In our case, you have 14 days of drugs being flowing into the tumor, and then it can help the immunotherapy to work better or any other therapy that one would think of to use. So that's what we're doing, basically.
Well, it's I was thinking with all of this, like you said, you've looked at 10 different patterns and different ways of doing, and I'm just wondering the process behind all of this. So first of all, you have to find the problem that you want to solve, right? That was always your aim. That was your goal. Okay, we
Yes.
want to solve this problem. um, was it well known of the challenge with the current method that was already well known and well documented that it's
No. I mean,
okay?
when we started to look for what technology we want to adopt, we looked into two kinds of technologies. One was for macular degeneration in the eye, which is also a very bad disease, and the other thing was cancer. Macular degeneration is something that my partner had a very, very a lifelong interest in. So we were looking at that. And my seek for cancer was, again, I think that a lot of things that happen in your past always are with you. So my mother died of liver cancer many years ago, and it is one of the things that I think it affected on many of my decisions in life, even though I can't say that I know it, but it seems like that's what it does. And that's why we also looked into various cancer potential therapies. And when you look for a technology, the challenge is not whether the science is good or not. I mean, when you check a technology from, I don't know, UPMC in Pennsylvania, or the Weizmann Institute in Israel, these are brilliant professors. They're much smarter than I am. I mean, I'm not even trying to compete with that. The main challenge is not whether the technology is amazing. The question is how applicable it is. One of the problems that I always found in various companies I worked or worked with, not worked in, but was consulting to, is that in the end of the day, when you take any kind of drug, there are a lot of different risks throughout the way. So an example for it could be there is an amazing molecule that you can use, but the delivery of this molecule into your target organ is not well established. So the fact that it may work amazing in any kinds of animal models, when you come to humans, there are a lot of things you cannot do because humans are not being treated the same way. For example, you can't, I don't know, blow a hole in a person's skull and then inject something on a regular basis. That doesn't work in humans. It may work in the lab with mice, but it's not applicable. The other thing that we always look at is how um, repeated the data is. For example, there was an amazing professor we basically communicated on her technology, and she had an amazing solution for therapy based on stem cells. But the problem there was that when we tried to understand whether the data that she gets is repeatable, we found out that it's not. So you can't use something that you know what's in it, right? I mean, you wouldn't give someone any kind of, I don't know, Tylenol, but not knowing how much Tylenol is there, it could be actually very dangerous. So these are the kind of things that you wanted to check. And when we started to look deeper into our technology today, but at the time it wasn't. So in our case, all the materials that have been used for this new therapy are already medically known, meaning the polymer that the skeleton of the microsphere is made of is already FDA approved and well characterized. So that means that we have no surprises there. One of the drugs that we're using is the drugs that is first in line for liver cancer today, for local regional liver cancer or localized liver cancer therapies. And the third was tested in many clinical trials. So we know its downsides and upsides. And we also found the reason, or it was published, what was the reason that it never succeeded. And it's being solved by the structural change that we made in the microspheres. So these are kind of things that means that if a regular molecule, or a new molecule, should I say, when you tested it on any kind of animal, I don't know why it is like it, but it's a fact that humans are very different from most animals in a way that a new molecule to be successful in humans is somewhere between 1 to 1,000 to 1 to a few thousand. It really depends which research you read, but it means that the chances of a molecule to really work in humans after whichever animals you tested in is very, very low. So what Professor Benny did, she found molecules already work in humans. So that was a very applicable point of view. I didn't say, but she's also a bioengineer in practice. So that means that she also thinks not just as a regular researcher, should I say, which is usually very smart people, but also as an engineering kind of thinking, which means that she's also very practical in all her inventions. She has many. We're just one. We have just one of them. So that was one of the things that led us to actually take this technology and try and develop it rather than take others, which were in some ways maybe more innovative, but in other ways were by far less innovative, because I think that having innovation within the box rather than thinking out of the box is much harder, actually. And that's what she did. And that's why we really liked it. And I mean, and here we are. I mean, a year and a half later, we are actually working very hard around the clock to get this developed and move into the human world.
That's through everything you've just said, I realized there's a lot of smart thinking in terms of the people that you're going to. You haven't just jumped into a solution. You're very well considered, and obviously I know you're partnering and you have these clever people around you, but it's very clever in the way that you're saying, right, okay, all of these things, we're looking at what currently works, well, what currently maybe doesn't work, but take the elements out of those and say, right, well, this works, it's already approved, we know that works, but it's just the delivery method or something like that. That's a lot of um, smart, intelligent decisions, which I think in hindsight, like you can talk about that now and you can say, okay, but at the time, how does that work practically? Because we often we often say, okay, yeah, it was really successful, but oftentimes, in order to be successful, you have to allow a lot of things not to be successful. Was that the route for you as well? Because it's lovely to sort of sit and say, yeah, I've done something really well, and I like that myself. But most of my learning has been through the things that haven't actually worked. Is that your world? Is that
Yeah.
practical? Because oftentimes I think of the medical field as there is so much testing, so many different routes, and I think in my in my limited experience or assumptions, I guess, of the medical profession, testing and experimenting is actually a big part of that. Whereas when I think about finance and all of that, we don't really test it. If you get it wrong, then that's not okay. There's like people don't like that. So pick apart anything that I've just said. Maybe those assumptions are incorrect. And yeah, do you want to talk to that?
No, no, your assumptions are actually very to the point and very true. Meaning, I always believe, and that's what I say also to all the people we work with, meaning we're working with a lot of different partners. And one of the things that I always tell my partners, you know better than I do, whether it's a regulatory aspect or a clinical aspect, obviously the physicians and also a lot of other professionals. And we always say, our job is not to know better than you. Our job is to actually learn from you. So, I find myself in situations where I'm negotiating something with another potential partner, and at a certain point, I said, okay, this is a point where I can say whether it's good or not. And it's not a matter of hunch, it's a matter of knowledge. So I say, I need to talk to our people and get back to you because I just don't know. And I think that that's something we discussed just a few minutes ago. And that is that whether you're a learning person or not. So I think that you should always learn from others, but there is also a limit to how much you can learn as an individual, an individual. Meaning, in the end, a person who's an expert in regulatory with 40 or 30 years of experience, I'll never be able to know what they know. So being smart means let them do their job, let them lead you when you need, and then when you think that you've reached a point where you don't need their help anymore, just tell them, okay, I can take it from here until I'll call you back to help me because I know that I will need it in a few minutes again. And I can say that throughout the process of finding the right technology, we had the privilege to meet a lot of these kind of professionals. I do believe in long relationships with people. I think that once you establish trust with a person, it's a very, very good thing to try and continue it for as long as you can. And this is exactly what we did, meaning many of the different consultants that we worked with when we tried to find technology are the consultants that we work with today. I myself, I always used to say that the person who made most of the mistakes is the one who knows more, right? Because if you succeeded, then you don't even know what it means if you always succeeded, then it means that you don't even know what it is to make a mistake, right? You never learned. You just did it once, it worked, so you move forward. But if you made mistakes, and in research, it's very abundant that, you think that you do the right thing, and then you found out you made a mistake and you have to do it again and you have to solve it. So the troubleshooting and the whole process teaches you a lot. And I think that one of the things that you learn in life is that if you're smart enough to understand that your mistakes are a challenge that brought you a little bit higher in terms of knowledge, it's not a failure. It's just another step that brings you closer to not making the same mistake again. And it's funny that you said it because I worked with a guy when I was much younger. I worked with a scientist in one of the companies that I was managing. And he told me that in a startup, you have about 1 million reasons to fail and one to succeed. And your job is always to try and avoid those millions ways and just try to stick to the one way that you won't fail. So I think it's part of it's part of the statistics, it's part of the work, but the more smart people are helping you, the higher the chance that you'll succeed.
Yeah. It's but so you co-founded this company. So I would imagine there's not just time, effort, energy, there's also money behind to do that. How do you and I would are you backed by like investors, etc., or is this your money if you're okay to share?
So we are two founders. I should say first that my partner, Dr. Wasser, is an amazing person. I mean, he's about 20 years older than I am, but he did exits. He one of the most talented, smart, and sensitive people I had the privilege to work with, and also very, very humble. So, for example, when a person finishes their medical school at 21, because he's such a smart person, it's very inspiring. And the thing is that he's also successful not only as a physician but also as a business person. So we are backed by private investors. So far, we're very young. So the money comes right now from founders, mainly by Walter, my partner. I mean, not all. He's the main founder investor. But on top of that, we have a few other investors who are supporting us. Very, very good people. Very, very supportive. Whenever we need help, they're there to help us as well. And we are still raising funds because we're a very early stage company. I think that every company, until you reach a point where you sell or you reach a point of sales, then you raise funds. So we are basically backed by private investors. We are also backed by the Israel Innovation Authority. We won a very prestigious and competitive grant for our development program, and we keep doing it all the time. Meaning, I look at it every day is an opportunity for another little success. But a lot of little successes move you forward. And so far, we managed to do a lot with a small amount of money because the strategic planning of development of a drug is usually the most important thing. Meaning, one of the things, again, that's the way I see the world. Meaning, if you have a little bit of money, don't spend it on doing just one thing. Try and do something much more forward thinking strategically. And then when the rest of the money comes and it can cover for everything, then you have everything already in line. So you don't have to start looking for the next person to help you with. You already have them because it's a process by itself. So that's what we did in the last year, more or less. I mean, we started at November 24, but we actually really started because it took us a long time to learn and understand everything. It takes a long time to really understand and, embed the needs, embed the essence of the technology. Just even, things that happen all the time. For example, we were looking at it as a therapy for liver cancer initially, and we understood that it's also a delivery system. But it took us a while to internalize the fact that it's a special delivery system, because when we started to look at other delivery systems, we found out that we're probably one of the only delivery systems that can create localized therapy because it semi blocks a blood vessel. So once we realized that, we understood, for example, that you could use it for other cancers. When we prove it in liver cancer, we can actually take a catheter, and if there's a solid tumor, that there is a blood vessel leading to the tumor, then you can actually apply the same technology with a different drug. So these are the kind of things that, even though we've been working on it for a while, it took us still time to basically translate this understanding into a real potential a product in the future. So yes, I think it's a process, and that's the way that it works. And we're always looking for investors. I don't think that we're different from any other startups worldwide. And we're very happy that we just finished another small raise, and every time it's a little bit more because we're still at the beginning. But we are looking for a lead investor to actually help us to really jump to the next level. And I have to say that we wouldn't have had all this information and understanding if we didn't work with very, very special people. And we are escorted by a very successful regulatory CMC advisory group, which is named Address. We're also working with several very high level professors in Hadassah Medical Center, from Memorial Sloan Kettering, we're now actually bringing on board a professor, a physician from Harvard, MIT, and a few other very successful businessmen. So a very nice person I've been working with in the past always said it takes a village to raise a kid. So it takes a village to raise a startup, and you build this village step by step. It's very hard, not because it's hard with the people. It's hard because it takes time to find the right people. And you have to always, like you said, to try and find okay, this person is what we need, or this person is not what we need, because it's not giving us the value as a company that we want. Because as a person, people are terrific, but you need to find the people who can give you what the needs of the company, to answer the needs of the company. And that's part of the process. And I think that one of the good things between Walter and myself is that we are both very strategic thinking, meaning we always look into the end of the process and try to kind of reverse engineer the needs rather than try to do every time a small step and then see whether we're reaching the right place. And that takes a lot of time too.
Is I was just wondering, like, because you it feels like you've had to, you either already had this network of people, um, whether they be investors or communities or experts in their field. Had you already had those connections, or you've had to build that as part of this journey?
So I have a very vast network of bio people, but it is amazing always to see that when you need, again, what we're doing is, liver cancer is not a small thing, but when you look at the medical world, it's another little niche in a world filled with, I don't know, thousands or tens of thousands of niches. So by having a good network, you have a good jumpstart, meaning you can actually approach people and then they can help you reach the next person. Another thing is that when you work with someone, that's at least the way I see it is that all my work is based on trust. I think that all agreements, everything that you sign, in the end, if you cannot trust a person, you always have to sign an agreement on everything, and I accept it. I'm not against it, but I think that the real relationship is what makes you succeed. So if you have someone that you can work with and you feel comfortable with and you trust them, then you can move to the next step. Now, some of the people that we needed for this project, for our company, are people that we never met before. They were just, across the street in some cases, but we didn't know that they are the right person because it takes time to identify them. So we were lucky like that because, for example, we are working with a professor named Yaron. He's the chairman of medicine in Hadassah Medical Center. And we were told by friends, you should talk to him. And I remember that when we discussed this internally, I said, why should we talk to another physician right now? We don't need it. But Walter, my partner, said, no, I think we should give it a chance. I said, you know what? You're right. We should give it a chance. Now he's one of the people we are consulting on a regular basis. And we meet with him on a regular basis. And he really helps us with the company in terms of insights, in terms of looking forward, in terms of understanding things. And these are the kind of people that, it's rare to find them when you start because I know a lot of physicians, but I needed the one physician who understands what I need. And sometimes it takes time. It happened to us also with some other professors like Ellen Bloom, who is an interventional radiologist. He's the guy who does the therapy for liver cancer, this localized therapy. So again, when we started talking to him, it's always amazing to me when you see things from 10,000 meters above. It looks like a tiny dot, right? There's not much in there, but the minute you start getting closer and the resolution starts to grow, you understand the depth of knowledge that people have and how little we know. I mean, you talk and say, well, maybe it's like this. And then you get an answer of, I don't know, 30 minutes explaining to you this little dot that you thought is actually a whole world by itself. So because of that, I think that this is the issue, that having a network to start with gives you the opportunity to really reach the right people. And I actually, only 2 months ago, we started to work with another MD PhD who's also a very successful businessman and entrepreneur. And it took us about a year to find him. Now we're talking to him almost every week because we realized that there are things that he knows and we never knew. And with all our experience, and God knows we have a lot of experience, we still don't have all the experience. So it's always the same thing. You always find another person who adds, 1% of knowledge to what you need to know. But this is the really important 1% of all over the other information that you have. So that's why it's so exciting every time.
I was just thinking about this. So, I, I in in my finance world, it was always about first to market, to move quickly, to innovate, etc. Yeah, with how you're explaining, the way that I perceive that is that you are definitely moving forward, but you that takes time. That's not you can't rush that. You might miss something, but you're very, if I say strategic, it feels you've very thought out. But I want to say the universe opens up these, oh, okay, there's someone over here maybe I need to talk to. And so as you were talking, I was thinking, core, you need a lot of patience, not patience as in people that are going to donate blood, but patience as in, okay, we're moving forward. Yes, we are, but oftentimes the world wants us to move really fast. How do you balance all of that? Is that a thing that you consciously think about, or it's just like, oh, okay? Because I've also heard the school of thought that when you invite too many opinions, nothing moves forward. So how does that sit in your world?
So I'm a long time startupist. I've been working in various startups for a very long time. And one of the things that you learn very quickly is the only thing that you don't have is time. So obviously, we always work very hard. I mean, we are working with Israelis, we're working with Europeans, we're working with Americans, we're working with people in India. So basically, it's almost a 24/7 job because of the time differences. We talk to the right person in the right time, meaning I don't always consult with all the different consultants that you work with, but based on the need, that's when you approach the right person. So I am cautious. I agree with you. You can't have seven people telling you what is the best regulatory strategy, because that means that you will never move forward. You'll be stuck with trying to understand what's the best way. And that's why I said before that it's based on trust, meaning we worked with several regulatory people or companies, and we found that, for example, for what we need, the dress was the best fit. And there's now another regulatory person we work with in the US. Her name is Jean Novak, Dr. Jean Novak. And again, we realized that she's the person we want to work with at a certain point. Like, we realized that this is the kind of person we want to work with. And because of that, we moved forward with that. So it's not that every day we bring everyone online and consult with them, but you have like 2 weeks of work, and then you reach a point where you need an answer. Then you bring them on board. And the other thing is that there's another side to it. If you work with a small group of people, the benefit is that they are all on top of what you're doing, because you keep the interaction very, very close. And the bigger the group, the less time you have, because in the end, it's resource management. You can't talk to 10 people at the same time. On the other hand, if it's a too small group, your problem is that it's a very, very narrow kind of knowledge, right? Because so it's a kind of jumping in and out from the circle, meaning you have someone that you talk to this and someone. So that's one thing. The other thing, I agree with you. One of the problems that we keep finding, the whole pharma world, deep tech technologies, all of them suffer from the same issue in terms of money, and that is it takes longer to reach the market. On the other hand, the upside of it is that these technologies, once successful, they're much more valuable than, I'm putting aside for a minute the cybersecurity and things like that, because I understand that these are a little bit less. Also, I think that cybersecurity is becoming more and more advanced, it's becoming more deep tech, right? Because it requires more time to develop. But in general, in the whole world of the bio, you're not inventing something that was never there. You're actually dealing with nature. When you have a drug, it means when you put it into a person, you have to make sure that this person won't die because of a mistake that you didn't understand, or that this person won't get the disease won't get worse. And when it's diagnostics, it's the same thing, meaning you don't want to tell a person you're healthy and then you find out that you made a mistake and they actually have cancer and it just now advanced a few more years and now this person is going to die because of such a mistake. So I'm saying this is why this takes longer. On the other hand, one of the things that we see that is happening, especially in the pharma world, is that the interest of the big pharma companies in small companies, when in the past it was usually after phase two, which means 6-7 years. Now it kind of shrunk into after phase one clinical trials in humans, which is about somewhere around 2, 3, 4 years, depends on what you're doing. And again, when I talk about practicality, in our case, because we have a lot of information, we think that we'll be able to do that in a much shorter time. So we're trying to also do it fast, but you can do it faster than you can really do it, because then it's not going to work. I mean, in the end, I always tell all our partners, I want to do things the fastest, and I'm going to challenge you all the time on your timeline. But if you tell me this is going to hurt the quality of the results, that's where I stop, because I cannot allow for the quality to be affected. And these are things that you have to manage all the time, because in the end, we're managing the company. This is our job.
I was just thinking how complex I think there's a lot of psychology in actually how you run this company, because you understand yourself very well. You've used the word humble, and I actually like the word humble. I think I'm one of those people. I really think that I can learn so much from other people. And oftentimes, where I see people that seem to be really good, that it comes with a lot of ego. And I think actually, if we could step back and be more humble, we can actually learn from other people. And I think that's a skill, because especially when there are people celebrating you around you, it's easy to build an ego and feel that you're the in the top 1%. So, but understanding that, being able to push enough to move fast, but recognizing there's a limit of balancing, the quality, the results, and what that is, and being able to challenge. That's a very unique skill set, because again, I can only bring my corporate background in finance. A lot of people would just push for pushing's sake, just for some reason. But I often found that they would just push and they wouldn't actually listen to someone who's saying, look, no. And I understand sometimes with no, people are scared there's something else at play. It's not that they can't do it. But oftentimes the person pushing pushed too much, and they weren't, it was more about them pushing and being the superstar than listening to the people. And you've spoken so much about actually trusting those people, and that's a quite a balance. Do you just do that naturally, or do you have to regulate yourself within all that? Because I assume your mission is, the goal is that important, yet you have to, there's many things to balance within that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. So first of all, big humble. I'll just give you an example. When you told me you want me to get on this program, I was surprised. What? Why would you want me? I mean, there's so many successful people. Why me? So I mean, that was my reaction initially, because I think that there are a lot of very successful people. I don't consider myself as a rock star or anything. I think I'm just another person. This is something I learned from my wife. Meaning, one of the things I learned from her is that you always have to balance, because if you take something to one side too extremely, usually it's going to, how do you say, blow back at you. So it's something that, I mean, she's been working on me for many years. We're married for many years, thank God. So for many years, I've been told that. And the other thing is that when you're young, usually I'm sure that when I was younger, I was more my tendency would be to push as hard as possible and not listen. But I think that during the academic world, and this is something I saw from both the professors. I mean, I was actually doing my PG was with one professor, my postdoc was with two. One was a physician, a very, very, very smart, and not only smart, very successful physician or an endocrinologist. His name is Professor Ben Glaser, and there's Professor Valdor, and also Professor Ofer Garlitz. So from all of them, I saw that all the time. Meaning, one of the things that I was really amazed is that on the one hand, they push you all the time to bring results, but at the same time stop you and say, make sure that they're okay. Make sure that you didn't come with the results half-baked, because then it means that you don't have the results. So I think that the research world also teaches that to you. Like everyone else, I made mistakes. It's not that I never pushed too hard and then I made a mistake. Everyone makes it. But I think that with time, you learn where you need to be more cautious and where maybe it's time not to listen. But again, I really believe that, I learned on my MBA that when managers want to do a brainstorming, they just want to hear everyone say what they think. And to me, it was, I said, what? But so why would you do it? But when I started managing people at the beginning, I saw this exactly the problem, meaning I don't like the other opinions. But then I started I mean, because of that insight that I heard from one of these professors in an MBA course, it hit me. And I said, okay, this is exactly what I want to avoid, or else why do I want everyone in the room? And I remember that I mean, when I started, I was at the beginning, I did more science, right? Because I was a chief scientific officer and CTO. So I would bring all the team. There was a company where I was managing 11 different disciplinaries. 11 employees from different disciplinaries. So I had computer guys, and I had a chemist, and I had biological people, and even at a certain point, even a physicist. And you put everyone in the same room and you ask a question. And then you get sometimes answered that to me were groundbreaking, meaning there was like this young guy who is doing research for about 2 or 3 years after he finished his first degree working in the company, and he was just with a different perception. but his idea was by far better than any idea I had at the time for the same problem or any solution. So with time, you understand that in many cases, you actually learn a lot more from different people. And this is something that I actually adopted, meaning I always said in any team, when it comes to an intellectual discussion, there are no ranks. We're all the same level. Only logic wins. And that's it. Nothing else. If someone had a better idea, it could be the janitor for that matter. If he has a better idea or she, this is the person that we have to listen to. And with time, it proved right because in many cases, I mean, again, it's something that you learn with life, right? Because when you do something for a very long time, then you don't even see that there are other ways of looking at it. So when someone is less preoccupied, you actually get a much better perspective. And this is one of the things. So I agree, but managing this balance is always very frustrating because you actually have to listen to people. So it's not easy, but on the other hand, the benefit worth it. So you do it.
Yeah. I'm just thinking of how many meetings that I've actually ever been in where, that manager has spoken and it was just like, okay, we're offering up opinions and they're like, and we just get back to their opinion. I was just like, I think it happens so much. Um, but yeah, I love the fact that you mentioned about hierarchy because, hierarchy for me is quite fake. It's a structure that we've put in place that for whatever reason doesn't actually make sense because it can actually limit people's ability to share their knowledge and share all of that. And I think a lot of companies like to put structure in for various reasons, one of them being control. But the reality is that someone up here really is disconnected from the person down here. And I've always said that the person doing the job knows so much. And yes, they will come with assumptions and, things that have been inherited. But most of the people down here doing the job really know what the thing is. But then the person up here often doesn't either connect or thinks there's a better way. And I think it's about bringing those levels together and exchanging. It's not that this person doesn't know stuff, they do, but it's about being on the same level and exchanging without that ego and sort of saying no and just trampling over because there's so much wisdom and the combination of that knowledge can really take you forward. And I think, I've been in meetings where there will be people that will not speak purely based on hierarchy. And I go, and then you have the conversation with that person outside and you're like, why did that not come up in the meeting? And it feels like a big waste because that person just felt that they weren't able to speak in front of all these people, but it's so rich in wisdom what they should say. And what I found is that then you have to take that knowledge and distribute it to all these other people in a different way rather than just being in a meeting. So, um, it's a very slow process if you have to do that. And some people don't want to speak. They are naturally introverted, etc. And so finding other ways to disseminate that knowledge is very useful. It's just, putting people in a room can feel very unsafe for some people. And so it's just, I think also understanding the psychology of people and how they best share knowledge is something really important as well.
Yeah, yeah. First of all, when I was young and you hear about these big CEOs that want to talk to all the employees every week, they go at least for a few hours and speak to I don't know, the lowest level of employees in the company. I always thought it was just being, trying to show that they care, but they don't really. But with time, you realize that they're actually trying to really connect also with the people who do the job because at a certain point, you can't do everything anyway. And you can't, I mean, I was in companies where people knew I'm not a scientist, I'm a scientist, but I'm not a computer person. Like I'm not a code writer. So I have no idea if someone says, look, I wrote this code rather than that. I'm an ignorant. I mean, I would say, look, I don't know what you're talking about. And when I worked with our data scientists in the previous company, I would work with people who are by far smarter than I am in what they're doing. So my challenge, for example, was how do you dumb it down for me to understand what they're saying in order for me to make the right decision? Because I have to incorporate data from physicists, data scientists, engineers, people. I had a great team. I loved everyone in the team. It was a very, very good team to work with. And my request was always, I don't want to know all the little details because I want to understand many of them. In some cases, you have to, but in many cases, you just try to say, just give me the thing that you find most important. Let's discuss the issues on that. And that's very helpful. And to me, it happened during my PhD. We were building a new microscope. It's a special, it's called a confocal microscope in the department. It's basically a fluorescent microscope, just much more sophisticated. And I remembered that I was the one in charge, and I was speaking with the guys who did it from a certain company. I won't mention the name because I don't want to cause embarrassment. But when we finished, I said, I have only one question. How do I save the files after taking an image with the microscope? And I was laughed at, meaning, what are you, an idiot? It's such a simple thing. You just do save. So I said, no, wait, I'll explain my question. When I move from the computer on the microscope to the lab, how do I use the same file? Because I don't want to lose the data. The smile disappeared, and it took them half a year to give me an answer. So it taught me that sometimes the most naive questions are actually the real hard questions. And one of the things that I've seen later on when I was running teams is that you have this young guy who asks the stupidest question, and you say, of course, it's nothing. It's very simple. And then you realize that he's actually asking the most important question that we didn't deal with. So it doesn't happen every day. But if you don't allow for such a culture to exist in your organization, whether it's a big organization or small organization, then hierarchy kills you because you never get the real information. So I'm not against hierarchy. I think it's important, but I think that the day-to-day work, it's not based on hierarchy. It's based on trust. Meaning I would never, I had an employee once asking me, I heard that you're the guy who buys coffee for the company. How about you get me a coffee? And I'm like, look, this is beyond, I said, like, you don't cross that line. But on the other hand, if you have a problem, you want to talk about something, especially if it's either personal or work-wise, my door is always open because we're people and we should communicate as people. And also, I think that if you're professional enough, not even as a profession, but you do your work in a professional way, you get the respect anyway. Your title doesn't make you the boss. It's your way of doing things. I believe that if you really are a sample of what is a good way of doing things, that people appreciate it eventually. So it takes longer because you don't say, I'm the boss, you do what I say. I never had to say such a thing. Tell someone I'm your boss and that's why you need to do it. It was always coming from the professional aspect. It happened maybe 5 times in my professional life, but I'm saying in general, most people, especially smart people, appreciate if they're being appreciated, and they respect people who work. I always tell my employees, you will never work harder than I do. Whatever I ask from you, I already asked for myself. So also I'm now a founder, so it's a little bit different because when you're a founder, it's like a baby. You work on it 24/7. But I have rules. For example, I would never call an employee after 6 o'clock afternoon because they have their lives. And on weekends, they should have their weekend because if they relax, they'll be they'll be much better when they come back and the results will be better. So I'm saying these are kind of rules that you learn with life because I've been working for people who demanded that you work also throughout the weekend. But then you're exhausted. And on Sunday in Israel, you don't work on Friday and Saturday, but then on Sunday you're exhausted. So you're not thinking straight. So these are the kind of things that I think that actually to empower employees. And by the way, I believe that if you didn't manage to take an employee and when he leaves your company, he's better than he started, then you failed as a person because this is what you need to do. You need to grow your people, not to make them feel smaller. And some people don't want that, by the way. It happened to me more than once that I was trying to empower someone and I got a bad feedback or a pushback on that. So you just have to, like you said, you have to adjust what you want to do to the right person. But in general, I totally agree with what you're saying, meaning that hierarchy is a very specific tool. But if you take advantage of hierarchy rather than being professional, then you're actually failing the whole essence of what you're trying to do.
I just love the way that you think and the way that you bring all of that wisdom. And I'm going to use the word humble again because the way that you've talked about your background, the way that you give credit to the people around you, including your wife. I think that's such a unique way. And I was thinking of your company and how it's progressing, and I'm just conscious of time, and we'll try and wrap up. But everything that you're doing has a vision, right? This is what you want to achieve. But within that, you have so much values, principles that you bring, and not. I, I obviously can't speak to your product because I know nothing about it. But obviously, you've done the work. You know all of this. You're bringing smart people together, which in itself is a skill. I believe that network and those relationships that you've built is a skill. But how you're doing that and how you're operating as a business, you're going to be successful as an operator, a runner of that company, because you're bringing those values and you don't just say it, you breathe it, you live it. And, just that example of, okay, I don't call people on the weekend. These are fundamentals that, oftentimes in companies, they'll say, oh no, we have this work-life balance. The reality is when you get inside, that doesn't actually exist. It's just like a buzzword or an attraction for that company. Now, I thank you very much for sharing all of this, because I think I didn't know where we were going to go with this conversation. I love the idea of what you're building and the fact that you're pushing a product forward because of a passion, because of things in your past, your mother, etc. But you're doing it in such a way that is so smart. And when I consider, you're building a product that can actually not only deliver what you're trying to do for liver cancer, but also can be replicable in other areas, which in itself is the money side of things. And we started that conversation to say, look, okay, there's so many things in the medical profession. You have to find the thing that actually um, does deliver money, because then that will get moved forward. It's I know you said that you work with very smart people. I consider you very smart in all of these areas, and I think that has come across so much for me. And I really love the way that you speak about this, and the way that you are, again, humble and enough to talk about that and understand. And I think that's amazing. So that's
Thank
my
you.
compliment to you. I really do appreciate it. Out of curiosity, where are you in your product? Are you are you testing? Has it been proven? What's the next step for?
So we are now, we already have proof of concept, both, I mean, Ofra, Professor Benny, she already showed it in her research, both in 3D models that imitate blood vessels, because this is basically a structure. So she used all kind of amazing 3D structures to show it. Also in different kind of cells, which is basically in vitro. That's the language that we use. And then also in rats, showing very, very promising results. Our next steps is to actually develop the therapy or the microspheres from a 50 micron size to a 200 micron size, because now they need to be adjusted to the artery of pigs and people, which are basically the same in the liver. And what we are planning next is to actually manufacture it, to have a manufacturing file, meaning that, you say, I want 50 micrograms of something, they press a button and you get it after a few weeks. And after that, it's to create it in a GMP grade, because once it has to be for humans, it has to be at a certain level of quality, which is very high. And from there, we go to pig studies, which we need to show also safety. This is one of the requirements of the FDA and the EMA, the European and the American regulatory agencies, and also the Israeli one. And then going into phase 1 clinical trials in humans, it's a first in human, where we actually show it in somewhere between 12 and 18 patients. And the idea is to show that we're not causing more damage. And we also think that we will be able to show some efficacy because of various potential biomarkers that exist. So it's not something that we're inventing, it's actually already out there. And once we did that, we're also going to start working on the phase 2, meaning now to show a proof of concept in humans at a much larger scale. And at the same time, we think that in our case, because of the real need for a therapy that will help patients with liver cancer, that we hope that it will be faster than usual. And one of the things that has started to happen lately is that more and more patients are being upset or not happy with the fact that there are many drugs, but the issue of adverse effects is a big thing. Meaning, in the end, if you live another 2 or 3 months, but you're in your bed because you keep throwing up all the time and you all the time have to go to the bathroom because of diarrhea or other side effects, then your life are hell until you die. And this is something that started to come up again and again. And that's one of the things that we were actually approached by several companies saying, can we use your delivery system in order to create the same efficacy and reduce the side effects because it's not a systemic thing. It's becoming something localized just to the area of the tumor. So we're looking at that as well. And this is basically our vision, meaning what we hope to achieve, it's first to show it in liver cancer and help liver cancer patients. But at the same time, this is a vision. So of course, I'm being very cautious because again, it's by far, we have a few years to get there. But the point is, imagine that you could take a systemic therapy for a certain cancer today and make it a localized therapy, meaning it will be as if a person just had a little surgery or a little procedure without any side effects or with very, very low side effects. A paradigm change in cancer therapy. And this is what we really want to do, meaning if we could leave a dent, so that would be the dent.
That's amazing. I think that's so. Again, I'm kind of blown away with all of this. The way that you think about things. Again, the way that you've pulled people together. And I was also thinking when you said, the next milestones you have to go through. That's you're not talking weeks. You're talking years. And that takes a resilience to kind of keep going. And I know, you've been successful to this point, but you still have, when we think in years, you go, woof, that's not, I've been running the marathon and now I've got to go and run another marathon. It feels a little bit like that in some way to me. So, yeah, I've loved this conversation. I think I could listen to you all day. Not only the way that you share information, and you said that about dumbing information down. And I think that's actually a skill. Excuse me. We we often overlook those people that can take something quite complex. And they don't need to know all of the details, but can really bring it down that people can understand it. That for me is a real skill set that we overlook. You don't find that necessarily on a job description anywhere. I think that's I think that's something you have to find in people, and I think you do that in such a brilliant way, because I've been able to follow all of this conversation in such an easy, digestible way. And I think when you've got someone like that that can bring those people together and be, again, I'll use the word humble enough to say, I don't know, can you explain it to me? And I think that's such a winning formula. And I've really enjoyed this conversation. Again, having dived into a world that I know nothing about, I feel that I've come out of it understanding a little bit more. And that makes these conversations brilliant. So thank you very much for your time. I really do appreciate it. I found you on LinkedIn. Where should people find you? Is it LinkedIn? Is it your company? You have a website? Where's the best
LinkedIn.
place?
LinkedIn. We have also a website, but we're on LinkedIn all the time. And I'm on LinkedIn whenever I get a message. Today it's like having a message on WhatsApp because I'm very, very available. Also, the bio industry is very LinkedIn related, meaning everyone in bio has a LinkedIn. And just one thing that I just want to emphasize, I always say we, I don't say I, because I really believe that it's not just me. It was never just me. It's with my partner. It's with the people we work with. It's always other people who make you a much bigger thing than just one person. I think that there are very few people in the world who by themselves manage to do everything. I think that in most cases, whenever someone is successful, there's at least 1,000 people who help them reach there. So I really believe in that. I don't think that anyone is successful just as a person. You're successful because a lot of people helped you get there. And I think this is part of being a mensch. It's about that. It's not even about, no, anyway, that's my perspective in life. I think that it's always a we thing. It's never an I. And I believe that that's it. And if anyone wants to hear more, I'm more than happy to talk. We're looking for investors all the time, but also for partners and other people. And in some cases, even we were approached by patients who wanted to hear. So we're being very cautious because I'm not a physician and my partner is a nephrologist. He's not an oncologist. but still we are trying always to help, and we're trying always to do good, because that's the only way we believe that's the way to do things.
It's amazing. I think that is a perfect way to end. I think it's we, not I, and I think that says a lot about you. And I think it's very in line with the person that I've had this conversation with. So, Yaron, it was honestly a real pleasure. Thank you for giving me your time. I know it's not always easy, but yeah, I really appreciate it. I really, really enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you very much, and I hope that we'll be able to talk in a few years and say that we have a solution for liver cancer.
Yeah, I'll be following you and see what's going on.
Thank you
Fantastic.
very much.
Thanks, Yaron. Take care.
Bye bye.
Bye. It's me again. So just a quick ask at the end of this video. So my plan is to grow this channel, to have more conversations, to get more interesting guests, to have live, genuine conversations. Now, if you're a follower of YouTube, all the channels say the same thing, and I'm going to have to do it. If you like it, please subscribe and hit the bell notifications. It's quite easy, but it just gives me some feedback to understand what you like and allows me to bring those conversations to you. So I'd really appreciate it. It's pretty quick, pretty simple to do. If you've got any comments, let me know as well. You know, if there's questions you think I should have asked, I'm open to feedback, constructive, of course. But let me know. And yeah, I really appreciate your support.